Very, very warm welcome to those who are joining us today for the first time for the Bhaja Govindam classes. You're most welcome. We have covered 19 verses. We will be getting on to the 20th verse this class. For some of you who may not be aware of the text Bhaja Govindam, even though it is a very, very famous text by the great Adi Shankaracharya, in our modern times perhaps immortalized by the very famous musical by the great M.S. Subbulakshmi. But if you go beyond the musicals, these texts have a great philosophical significance. Just to give you an insight, each verse is a standalone. There is no specific thought pattern, barring a few sections. There is a thought flow. So each verse is a standalone verse. Each verse, as you see, has been given a title. And each verse is known as a flower, a manjarika. So a flower has a significance. So when you look at a flower, the flower is very beautiful. When you get closer to the flower has a literary beauty. And then the flower contains the deep in the bowels, the honey. So there are three aspects when you look at a flower. Drawing the same analogy to the verse, to the message in the text, every verse, if you look from a distance, when you chant the verses, it has a certain musical, it has a certain beauty, it has a certain appeal. It looks beautiful, so it sounds very appealing, like a flower. The verses, when you chant, has a very soothing effect. It calms your mind. When you go a little deeper into the literature, these verses have very, very practical messages. They are very, very down to earth, and the beauty of that is very relevant to our times today. So there is the practical application of life and living, the values you need to carry on with your daily activities. That's the literary beauty. But it's only the bees. But those who seek the real wisdom, you go deep into the bowels of this literature, you have the real takeaway, the highest truths ever known to mankind. So each verse is a standalone, each verse has a deeper import. And the exercise we are looking here is not merely content by the mere fragrance, which is the chanting. We are not content by the mere aura. We are not content by the practical application. We are here to get to the honey, the very bottom, the very deep philosophical message which each verse gives away. Okay? Now, those of you who have any queries or questions, please, you could draw my attention. You could clarify in the chat box, or you have the access to speak. You can raise your hand. I think there is a section where you can draw my attention. You will have a fair chance of clarifying or anything that you don't understand. But please remember, anything that you begin with, it takes a little while to get acquainted with the terminology or the context of its usage. So please bear with us for a while, but once you got the groove of it, the hang of it, you'll find it's one of the most beautiful texts to study. All right. Now, the 19th verse, which we did last week, the very, very famous verse. Let's chant the 19th verse once, just for getting ourselves to the rhythm of what it is. He says there, Yogarato va, Bhogarato va, Sangharato va, Sanghavihinaha, Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chetam, Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva. Very, very beautiful message. The title of the verse is Source of Happiness. He says, Nandati, Nandati, Nandatyeva. Here, He finds himself happy, happy, indeed happy. Now, how many of us can claim that? How many of us have achieved that? How many of us have mastered that state of finding that peace and happiness within? So it's very interesting to understand prima facie. It is your own mind that creates a hell for you, and it is the very same mind that creates a heaven. A hell and heaven are not something which is up in the clouds, they're not some geographical places. It's how you relate to your life, how you relate to your experiences, how you handle your challenges, and what you make of it. It's not what you deal with, it's what you make of what you are dealing with. Whatever that is presented to you in life, remember, it is not that happiness derived from an external factor. Happiness is not from an external source. And the same breath, sorrow or agitation is not from an external source. The problem we all do is we attribute either the agitation or happiness to an external source. So it is not from an external source, it's right from within you. So where is that? It emanates from the self. Now that state, to be able to extract that, it boils down to your ability to identify with it. So when you identify with something, you become it. So when your mind that identifies with the inner self, it revels in peace and happiness. The same mind, when it identifies with the external world, becomes a source of agitation and sorrow. I repeat, this is a very important practice. This is the sadhana. This is not what the verse is saying. I'm telling of the practice. The verse talks about the state. I'll come to that. But what the practice is, when your mind is identifying with the self within, the very same mind becomes an embodiment of peace and happiness. You will find yourself reveling in joy and bliss and happiness because you have disconnected yourself from the external happenings. But the moment you choose to disidentify with yourself and identify with the external world, instantly you become vulnerable to the fluctuations of the external world. So your mind is bound to go through agitation and sorrow. This is a natural consequence. And what determines that happening? What is it that defines that happening? The law that defines it is whether you are going through a hell or heaven. It is defined by the law of attachment. Remember, the law of attachment is nothing but as you think, so you become. As you think, so you become. As simple as that. If you're constantly thinking of something, you become it. You're thinking of the stock market, you become the stock market. You become very vulnerable because the stock market is very volatile. It goes up, it goes down. I remember whenever you're passing through any channel, especially in the section of the news channels, their section of these certain news channels, they have the stock markets. At the very bottom, there's a scrolling. And I just look with the keen eye, I just look at them for a while. That same is all either green up or red down. Green up, red down. Green down, green down, green, black, red down, green up, green up. So I keep used to say, okay, red up, green down. Some kind of a thing going up, down, going up, down. You also go through up and down of that stock market. Why do you have to subject yourself through all that? If you identify with it, you are in trouble. You go through it, but with a spirit of detachment. So as you think, so you become. Now here, the verse is saying, he whose mind rests in Brahman, yasya Brahmani ramate chittam. Yasya Brahmani, he whose mind rests in Brahman, such a person finds himself very, very peaceful and happy. Very peaceful indeed. Okay. I think some of them who have joined in today they might be having some concerns. Okay, Srinivasan sir, is there anything that's concerning you?
So this is Venkataraman. I am able to hear you properly, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, great. Thank you. So, getting back to the thought flow, what I was saying, everything in life depends on where is your mind. Now the class has just started, very soon you'll have to ask yourself, if I were to ask you, where is your mind very easily wanders away. That is the very nature of the mind. In fact, the entire spiritual discipline, the entire gamut of spiritual practice, the entire life as such, boils down to one quality, one discipline, that is nothing but harnessing your mind, controlling your mind. If you want to check how well have you progressed in life, how well have you evolved in life, how have you mastered life, okay, I think we all need to have a little, be little conscious. Before I move forward, I would request each of you, go to your microphone and please mute your microphone. All of you, please. The little time we spend, I wouldn't want any one of us to be, disrupting or disturbing the session. So if you mute yourself for any sound the microphone picks up at your end. Mr. Srinivasan, Ayushi, Mr. Rajesh Sheth, Rajima, Mr. Rajesh Kator, Tata, can I request you all to please mute your microphones? Usha K, Shiva, are you all able to hear me? All able to hear me? Yes, Shiva? Okay, Mr. Srinivasan, you're unable to mute? Okay. Vijay, just unmute.
I'm
Okay, rather, why don't you mute Mr. Srinivasan? Okay, great. All right. Ayushi also, can you please mute Vijaya? I think Vijaya, just mute everybody's audio. Vijaya, just go about muting, and if anybody has to say, you can just draw my attention, you will be given the access. I think that would be far better managing it. All right. Now, whatever be that has happened, it's a simple exercise. Has this little distraction, has it affected your mind? Where has your mind been for these few minutes? 2-3 minutes. So it is very important that you're able to bring back your mind, how quickly you bring it back to your present action. And as you realize, the nature of the mind is it never cooperates with you. It is nothing to do with your mind or a child's mind, anybody's mind is like that. If you ask me, how does mind behave? Exactly like an immature mind. That is the very nature of the mind. That's the very swabhava of the mind. The nature of the mind is, it is asthira and chanchala. They say it constantly wanders away into the past and future. So if I have to keep myself in the present, it is not possible for the mind to be here. It has to be controlled, it has to be policed, it has to be supervised by another faculty. So the faculty which keeps the mind in the present action is known as the intellect, the buddhi. So the spiritual exercise, as I've said, or any true evolution, or the spiritual sadhana, the very effort revolves around to be able to master your mind. Nothing but mind control or self-control. So here in the 19th verse, the seeker or the practitioner has reached the pinnacle of spiritual perfection. So here he's talking of a person who has conquered his mind to such an extent that yasya brahmani ramate chittam, his mind actually has got itself anchored onto Brahman. His mind rests on Brahman. And when your mind rests on Brahman, on the self, on the reality, as I've said a little while earlier, when your mind is in tune with yourself, it becomes the embodiment of peace and happiness. When your mind is associated with the external world, it becomes a source of sorrow and misery. This is the very nature, this is the natural consequence, depends on how you approach life. Now, one who has conquered that mind, one who has got his mind established on the self, we took the example last week, is Hanumanji. Hanumanji had achieved that impossible state of getting his mind transfixed on Rama. It's symbolic. Hanuman is a monkey. And a monkey conquering that very nature means he has got over the trait of being fickle. Don't we say you've got a monkey mind? A monkey mind means you can't make up your mind. Your mind is its nature. It is all the time fidgety. It is constantly rambling. It's constantly rushing from one place to other. If it is at a place, it's very fidgety. That's the nature of the mind. And Hanumanji conquered it because his mind got fixed on Rama. When that happens, he says, Yogarato va, bhogarato va, sangharato va, sanghavihinaha. So the very first line says, whether you are in strict spiritual practice, which is yoga, or you are in bhoga, means apparently you are participating in the world, enjoying the world, very opposite of spiritual practice. Sangharato va, sanghavihinaha. Sangha means company. Whether you are in the spiritual in company of someone, means you are living a life of a grihastha, you are living a life of a normal person, or sangha vihinaha, you are living a life of a recluse. You are a brahmachari. You are withdrawn from all the worldly association. He says it doesn't matter, because you achieve the very objective of spiritual practice, which is get your mind established in Brahman. Now, I have given a word of caution last week, and I will repeat it. This verse is not a practice. This verse is not a sadhana. Rather, this verse is a state you reach. He's talking about the goal, the culmination, the destination. It is not the journey. It is not the path. Many people have misunderstood this and got into trouble. So as a spiritual practitioner, you need to know what not to do, as at the same time you need to know what to do as well. So this verse is not to be practiced. This is an idea as to where you reach, what you experience. Alright, so take a particular note, though it's a very, very beautiful and oft-quoted verse. Alright, so let's move on. We will take verse 20. Bhagavad Gita Kinchitadhita Ganga Jalalava Kanika Pita Sakradapi Ye Namo Rari Samarcha Kriyate Tasyaya menana charcha. Bhagavad Gita kinchitadhita Ganga jalalava kanika pita Sakridapi yenamo rari samarcha Kriyate tasyaya menana charcha. Another very, very beautiful verse. Now the theme of this verse is he gives us the three essential spiritual disciplines. Please take a particular note. The three essential spiritual disciplines are the three yogas. These three yogas are the three main highways to self-realization, the three freeways. These are the main path. So most of your spiritual journey is spent in these three paths. And what are the three paths? Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and the Jnana Yoga. So the translation of the verse, he says, he who studies the Bhagavad Gita even a little, sips a drop of Ganges water, worshipped Lord Murari at least once, such a person has no dispute with Yama. And Yama is the Lord of death. Kriyate tasya yamena na charcha. Na charcha means there is no argument, he doesn't have any contention with Lord of death, Lord Yama. Now, very, very interesting the way he puts it. Now, the first quality he says, Bhagavad Gita, Kinchita Gita. Kinchit. Kinchit means a little. He who studies the Gita even a little. Now, how much of Gita have you studied? There only you have faltered. You may say, sir, for the past 30 years I am studying so much. I am the biggest blunder I have made all my life. So, there is a pun on the word Kinchit. So again, don't have to take literally the Gita. Here you can take the very text, Bhaja Govindam, or any literature for that matter. So since you are dealing with knowledge, it becomes Jnanam. It is the Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. Now, why does he say very little of the Gita? As I've mentioned the other day, even in the interview of some of you who have followed it, there is a fundamental difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is nothing but an information you have gathered from an external source. It could be through listening, it could be through reading. In the olden days, there were no written literature. So the only form of learning, acquiring information through Shravana, you have to lend your ears. So you lend your ears to the Guru or wise men, you hear wise counsel, you get wonderful ideas. You know what they know, you're able to understand or fathom what they have experienced. That's what wise men do. They share their experience. So when they share their wisdom and experience, it comes across to you only as information. Sorry. So what you got to understand is that is just a raw material. The information that comes to you is a raw material. It's like I bring in the raw material of cotton and silk into my factory in huge quantities and I've stored them there. If you leave them there, they will remain there. Nothing will happen to it, isn't it? Unless and until you start processing it. Unless until you clean the material, process it through a machinery, put through a process, whatever is required. And when it's put through a process, then it comes at the end of that process, end of that phase, you get a fabric, either silk fabric or a cotton fabric. But the fabric and the raw material, the cotton, the missing link is the processing. The end fabric is the wisdom. The raw material is the knowledge, the information. Now what many people do, they don't realize that the knowledge that comes their way is in a raw form, it is of no use to you. And this is the biggest mistake people do in the spiritual field. They are very well informed. They know a lot. They have read a lot. They're voracious readers. They're well versed. They can rattle off the scriptures. Some people can rattle off Western literature. Other day I was with someone and I was completely floored by him. And he okay, getting a message that there is no audio. Harishi, no audio. Shiva, okay, Shiva is okay. Amar says okay. So please check at your end. Please log out and log in back. Yes, Mr. Rahul. Vijay give yeah. Yeah, Rahulji, anything to say?
Wait. I was just trying to
You can use the microphone.
Mute myself. This is the first time I'm using this interface.
Okay. That's fine, no problem. In fact, don't trouble yourself. What we have done is we have actually disabled the facility so that you don't have to struggle with it and you can concentrate. If for any reason you have to say something, as you all have raised your arm and drawn my attention, please do that. So we will unmute all your microphones. All right? Vijaya, please unmute. Oh, sorry, rather mute your mute Mr. Rahul's microphone. So what was I saying? People are able to rattle off information by heart. You have information. You are able to rattle off Shakespeare. You are able to rattle off Vishnu Sahasranamam. You can do whatever you can rattle off. It's just mugging. It's just you have a certain acumen. You have a certain talent. You have a certain an ability, a liking, and you have a sharp ability to absorb that information. So you pick it up. Some people are very sharp, and as you grow old, what people keep saying? When you say something to them, Indian reaction is and you say, and a Westerner would say, I beg your pardon, I'm sorry. Indians say so that means that receptacles are dying away, it's all going down. But when they are sharp, you have to read once or twice, you got it, man, you got the bull by the horn, but you only got the information. So every person who is dabbling with these ideas, who is entertained by these ideas, who's tickled by these great values, understand you have just taken the first step, which is information, and that takes care of the first level of ignorance is lack of information. So ignorance, remember, please take a note, ignorance manifests in 3 stages. The first level of ignorance in every human being manifests as lack of information. As someone would say, oh, I have never heard Bhaja Govindam. I don't know what it has to say. I don't know. So that level of ignorance of not having information is obviously addressed by lending your ears or reading scriptures or gaining some information. And thereafter you say, now I know what Bhaja Govindam is. I've heard him. He could have explained a little better, but okay, whatever he said, I've heard him. Lack of information, Shravana. But the second level of ignorance is lack of understanding. You know it, but you don't understand the intricacies of it. You don't understand the rationale of it. You don't understand how it's directly connected. How is Bhaja Govindam connected to my life? I'm going through relationship problem, and my friends have said me, come and listen to Bhaja Govindam class. You will say, what is Bhaja Govindam got to do with my relationship problem with my wife, or a problem with my employees, or problem I have a health problem? How is it connected? You don't understand the connection. You don't understand how this knowledge has relevance to your lives. You're not able to strike a chord with the deeper message, and that is the phase of processing, which I've said earlier is known as manana, which is reflection. So when you do manana or reflection, reflection is nothing but is chewing the cud. It's like the cow or the cattle regurgitate the food back into the mouth and they rechew. Isn't it? You see a cattle sitting at leisure, its jaw is active. What it's doing? It is chewing. So you find a lot of froth forming around the mouth. Why? It is bringing the food back. So in the same sense, philosophically, please don't literally try to do it physically. Yeah? Philosophically, you're regurgitating the knowledge or the ideas which you have received. You bring it back and revisit and question them. You understand from what standpoint are they saying? What is the argument? Why is it being said? How is it relevant to my life? What is the logic and reason behind it? Should I take it on its face value, or should I take it on its faith, or should I go by authority? You just simply start questioning. Just throw questions at it and see, does it make sense to you? Does it give answers to you? And when you go through that process, you get a certain amount of wisdom. And when you get that, you get into the third phase of ignorance, is lack of experience. And when that is gone, you take care of experiencing that understanding. You start walking the talk. Not just you talk about it, you also live by it. You are unknowingly, you are able to translate your ideas into life. You start living by these ideas. So it's a process you go through. So when he says, read a Gita little, the emphasis is not on information, but getting into the process of reflection, which leads you to transformation. I hope you all are getting. Knowledge, yes, Ayushi, knowledge is raw material, as I've said earlier, but you need to process it, and nobody does that. So what's happening? There is an overflow of ideas. There is inundated, and we are in an era where we have so much information. In fact, we seem to know more than what we need to know. So put an end to knowledge, put a start to reflection. And ideally it is said you must give 70% of reflection, 80% of reflection, 20% information. So this is the proportion. Give more time on reflection, less on information. So one idea, think over it, ponder over it. So very little of the Gita. So what you need is, what brings about the transformation is reflection, not information. Just for the benefit of those who have not heard this, other day, did we not mention in the Sunday class, some of you were there, we mentioned about Rajima, we have enabled your microphone. Can you tell me what did we speak other day in the Sunday class? The example we have taken? Mandatingla. Did we not take the example of how much culture do you add into milk? Now tell Ma.
milk in its
Speak,
raw
Rajima,
form
speak.
is
We can hear you.
it's just the raw milk in its it has to be heated, and then a little bit of curd needs to be added to set the curd. How do and once you take the yeah.
Okay. Can we go step by step, ma? What does the milk symbolize?
Milk
What does the milk
symbolizes the raw.
symbolize?
Huh?
No copying.
No.
No copying, I'm saying. Don't look at the notes.
The
So the
mind.
milk symbolizes
Yeah.
the milk symbolizes the mind. And what is the aspect of the mind or the milk? It is fluid. It runs everywhere, isn't it? Correct.
Once we
And then what did we
we
say?
heat it and add yogurt curd to it, it becomes set. It sets.
Yes. Now I get the example. You're right. Let me take it over. See the example of the curd. How much culture you add into milk. The milk is the mind, which is immature. It runs helter-skelter. It runs here and there. The milk is fluid. So what you do, you heat the milk, you bring it to lukewarm temperature, not too hot, not too cold, means your mind has to be rightly tuned in. You must have a little experience of the world, and yet you understand that there is something beyond it. The one who has not experienced the world will have a certain value for the world, certain black market value. He is not ready for this knowledge. So this knowledge is only given to one who is ready for it, who understands its value. And when that understanding comes, when he has experienced life, he has gone through the ups and downs of life, he understands the hollowness or the impermanence of what life has to offer, and then he turns to the higher. That kind of a mental makeup is implicated by the milk is just lukewarm, not too hot, not too cold, and to that lukewarm temperature you add a little bit of culture, stir it up, leave it undisturbed overnight, and the next morning before sunrise you take a stirrer or a churner and churn the curd. But before you get to the churning, what has happened is that little curd which you added transforms the fluid mind into a matured mind. When you leave it overnight, give time for knowledge to settle down, and then consciously reflect on the ideas early morning, you get wisdom. And such wisdom is always stored in the pots of devotion, like the olden times. They used to store the cream or butter in pots of water, cold water. And then when you put it under the fire, which is in the heat of meditation, you get butter, which is permanent, doesn't get spoiled. So the example is, the analogy is how much culture you add into milk for an immatured mind to become mature. You don't need lots of curd, you just need a little bit of curd. So that's what he says. Very little of Gita is sufficient, and that is jnanam. It's not cramming of information, it is processing the information you already have. That's the accent. Okay? And then he says, who drinks a drop of Ganges? That refers to bhakti or devotion. Now, as we all know, people have a great reverence for the Ganges. They say Ganges is the heavenly rivers. It has come from the heavens. Don't we know the story of Bhagiratha? No. Who is good? Shiva. Bhagiratha story theriyuma? Yes, sir. Namaskaram ponninga eppadi You don't have to shake hand. I know we are far away, so COVID is too far. Don't worry. Yeah, shake நமஸ்காரம் கொடுக்குறீங்க. என்ன கிருஷ்ணசாமி சார், அந்த பகீரத ஸ்டோரி தெரியுமா? பேசுங்க சார்.
Manasa is telling.
No.
To bring down our ancestors.
No, you tell. To give moksham to his ancestors who are all in this thing, he brought the Ganges down.
To give moksha to his ancestors, he brings down the river.
Ganges doing penance in standing in one leg. That is the Bhagirath story. He has not left the penance. Full of.
நீங்க story you're not telling a story as a story. Story always starts by saying once upon a time. அப்போதான் story தான் start ஆகுது.
Guruji, you are good in that. We can only indicate. You have to tell the total background so that everybody will listen to you.
Sir, we are all lending our ears to you, sir. Sir, I am actually very bad at stories. I only tell philosophy. I know my strong point and I know my weak points. அதுக்காக நான் கேட்டேன். Yeah, Jayama. Looks like Jayama wants to say something.
Hari Om Guruji. Yeah, after serving the purpose, when she's brought down, she goes devastating and very, she destroys everything that comes her way. So then the Bhagirath, he drinks the whole river, and then when the lords appeal to him to let her, then he through the ear he lets her out. He controls her and lets her out.
என்ன ஜெயராமன் வெர்ஷன் ஆஃப் பகீரதா ஸ்டோரியா? நான் எப்போ கேட்கவே இல்லையே இதெல்லாம் ஸ்டோரி. இந்த ஸ்டோரி இது. No, you are not wrong, ma. I understand where you're coming from. See, the story is of, as Manasama started by saying, that Bhagiratha was told that he had to bring the Ganges which was in the heavens to purify the sins of his ancestors. And he had to please the goddess Ganga, the river goddess, to please come down to the from the heavens to the earth to purify the sins of ancestors. Now, whatever that is, don't ask me why and how, it's just a story. And then story goes, he did great penance. As Manasama said, he stood on one leg. If you don't understand what it is, you try and do tomorrow yoga. Enna, Shiva? Vrikshasana. Vrikshasana, you stand on one leg, you take the other leg, feet put on the root of your other leg, above your knee, as high as possible, and stand. And you stand with your palms above your head in Namaskar, Ama, Abdi, Shiva. Can you show us how to do it, Shiva, now? You get more than Vedanta inga. Sir, don't stand on the chair. The chair might fall in again. Sorry. Now another 20 minutes stand like that. அப்படியே நீங்க யோகா குரு தானே, அப்படியே stand for next 20 minutes in that Vrikshasana pose. I can't hear you, Shiva. ஒரு நிமிஷம். You got to activate
now?
microphone at your end, sir.
Yeah. The very interesting aspect is you have
Yes.
to focus at one point before you get on to that posture. Otherwise, you cannot get on. You don't get the balance. You have to have one pointed focus, then you get on to the posture.
Ama.
That's a very interesting aspect of the Vrikshasana.
Very true. Yeah. Yes. So even you have to control your sight onto a point, and also your mind. If your mind is wandering, also you lose your balance. So imagine what kind of discipline these great Mahatmas had when they did tapas, penance in that Vrikshasana pose, for so much so ant hills used to be built around them. Illingla? Have you not seen movies depicting the intensity with which they had to do the tapas? So in that context, Bhagirath also did great penance to appease Ganga, and Ganga was very pleased. So she appeared and said, okay, Bhagirath ji, what do you want? She said, Ma, we want you to come down from the heavens for this purpose. But she said, see, I am very, very powerful. In fact, Ganga means heavenly knowledge, which is the knowledge of Vedanta. And this exactly, when I joined the ashram when I was 16, this is exactly what Guruji told me, that the knowledge is so intense, the knowledge is so subtle and cryptic. It is too difficult to fathom, and it might damage you. It might hurt you mentally. It might do a mental wear and tear, because to go through those 3 years of such study, spending 8 hours, 10 hours a day with such subtle subject might damage your head, your brain. So he said, I don't think you're suitable. But then somehow I proved him wrong, and then I stayed on. So he said, that's what Ganga said, I'm too powerful, and if I were to come from the heavens with that force, I will actually bore a hole through the earth and go off other side. It will not serve the purpose. So if you want this knowledge, you must have a patra. Make sure somebody is worthy of receiving me. And now he asks, okay, who do you think is worthy of receiving me? And then Ganga says, there's only one man, Lord Shiva. Where is he? He is where? Mount Kailash. Mount Kailash, Kailasam. He is sitting there. He is in his own world. You will have to please him to give you audience. And then she disappeared. And again Bhagirath did a long penance to please Lord Shiva. And ultimately Lord Shiva also appeared and said, what do you want? Oh Lord, thanks for the audience. I want you to receive the Mother Ganges. And he heard and he disappeared. 1 week passed, 1 month passed, 2 months passed. There is no Ganga. Again he had to do penance, not that long, to appease Shiva and say, please appear. And he again appeared and said, now what? He said, sir, where is the Ganges? It's with me. What do you mean with me? You said receive the Ganges. I received it. And then Bhagirath says, oh Lord, I told you to receive it and release it. You didn't hear the release part, you received and kept it with you. And that's when Shiva, where did he keep the river? In his matted locks. So he had to keep it in the matted locks because the river, the knowledge has arrogance. So Ganga was very arrogant. So to teach her a lesson, he put in a matted locks. And the Ganga, you see it's flowing, is he just adjusted his hair a little bit. Like if I imagine I adjust my hair a little bit like this. What little hair you see, I can adjust. What I don't have, I can't adjust. But Shiva had a lot of hair. So he adjusted a little bit, and from that the Ganges was flowing. Don't you see in the portraits or pictures, Ganga flowing from his matted locks, and that is the torrential Ganga we see. This is all mythology story. So drink a drop of the Ganges refers to Bhakti Yoga. So when you have this Bhakti symbolic to the dip in the Ganges, what is the symbolism behind that? What's the philosophical significance? Siddharaman sir, any idea what is the philosophical significance of why you dip in the Ganges? Hamara Jima devotion, but what is the devotion? What's the significance on that? How is that connected to bhakti? Anyone, even those who have come for the first time, please feel free. Cheppan sir, Setraman garu.
We surrender, we wash our sins and ego.
Purifying sin, surrender, and getting rid of ego. Yeah, washing is not, it says drinking a little bit of Ganges. Faith can certainly move mountains. Bharadwaji, you are saying faith can move the mountains. Absolutely. You know, this is the verse in the Dhyana Slokas. I'm reminded, Bharadwaji, you talk of faith. In the Dhyana Slokas, which is an invocation to the Gita, he says, Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Paramananda Madhavam. If you have known, it's a very, very famous reference. He says, Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim. It makes a mute speak and a lame scale mountains. Yat kripa tamaham vande Paramananda Madhavam. Anandam is not just not Anandam, Paramanandam. It is supreme joy, supreme bliss. What? That faith in the higher, that knowledge of the higher, the conviction, that belief system in the higher. So it can make a lame scale mountains a mute to speak. So it's very, very deep significance. So but what you must understand is bhakti is an element which deals with your mind. So when he says drink a little bit of Ganges, symbolizes devotion. Now what is the elements of devotion? As rightly said, some of you have also said, it is surrender. Surrender is bhakti. Bhakti is also an attitude of gratitude, is also bhakti. When you feel grateful and thankful to what you have already have with you. In fact, that is it's a checkmate. Being grateful and thankful is a checkmate. If you understand the game of chess, it's a checkmate. Now my question is, checkmate to what? Krishna Swami sir. Bhakti or devotion,
attachment.
If you understand it as being grateful and thankful, is a checkmate to what? Attachment. What is attachment, sir? I don't know what that very big words are.
Vasana with desires.
Very nice. Correct. When you are thankful and grateful, in fact, let's put the other way around. When you are not thankful or grateful, we have learnt it recently in one of the classes. When you don't have this bhavana or feeling of being grateful or gratitude, it generates more demands in your mind. It generates more desires. You are driven on that cravings for having more and more. I want this, I want that, I don't have this, I want to have that, I have enjoyed this, I'm yet to enjoy that. You're not thankful for what you already have. And when you don't have the gratitude, you always compare people who are more fortunate than you. These are all the natural consequences happen when you don't have bhakti. When you compare yourself with people who are more fortunate than you, what happens? Kama arises, desire arises. I wish I have that. I hope I can enjoy that. That kind of a constant thoughts arise. Your mind is, and as a result of that, whenever there is a desire, what is the next, not next. Whenever there is a desire, what is the connotation? Shiva, wherever there is a desire, what's the connotation of a desire? Anyone? Okay. Bhadwaji say, I don't have. Yes, desire is a want. Dharanima says, you need a fulfill. Yeah, you have a desire. Desire is fulfilling. Now, I'm not asking the literal translation, but whenever someone has a desire, what's the connotation? Vasanti is saying unfulfillment leads to agitation. Rahulji says the urge to satiation. Yeah, that urge to satiate. There is that craving. You want to acquire. Sudhakar Garu is saying greed. Srinivasan Garu is saying you want more and more. Yes, you all are thinking. You're all thinking right. This is what I'm looking for that. And Shivakami Ma, Soumya Ma has hit the nail on the head. Today she's in full form. Very good, Soumya Ma. And wherever there is desire, remember, correct Harishji, one is poor. When you have desires, you feel yourself, you're poor. Correct. But what is the natural consequence of that is you find yourself, you're never contented in life. You've lost that very peace, that happiness, that bliss that would emanate from contentment. That satiation never happens. And now you draw the connection. Where there is bhakti, or rather when there is no devotion, there is desire. Where there is desire, there is demands and cravings. And where there is demands and cravings, there is no contentment. But where there is bhakti, when you have an attitude of gratitude for what you have, you are thankful for what you have, you compare with people who are less fortunate than you, you feel yourself contented, you are peaceful and happy. Draw a connection, draw a line of thought, establish a convincing argument and reflect on this. This is what I mean. Perhaps this comes to you as a matter of information. You may have known it. You may have heard about it. But let's say this line of thought, in this context, if it is presented in this way, how devotion is directly connected with contentment. Now, establish as a line of thought, examine it. Examine it with reference to your life. Now, what is it that is, now as I'm talking, there's something that is bothering you, isn't it? Certain things that you desire, it's not happening. You had a desire to go for a holiday with the family and you had to call off that holiday and your tickets have not been refunded and your plans are gone, everything is gone. You find your desire is not fulfilled. You still have that underlying desire there, it's not fulfilled. What is the consequence of that? You are agitated, you're disturbed, you're not happy. So any situation you try to bring in your own case studies and put at the backdrop of this understanding. So devotion means surrender, devotion means gratitude, devotion means gives rise to peace and contentment. That is symbolic with drinking a drop of Ganges. And then he says, worship Murari at least once. Here, worshipping Murari, here is Karma Yoga. Again, worship refers to service and prayer go together. And again, there's another connection we're drawing. Wherever there is gratitude, you will always want to pay back, isn't it? Wherever there is gratitude, you want to payback. When you are thankful, when you know you have received something, you want to be grateful. And gratefulness is not in an attitude alone, it is an act of gratitude. So when you live a life of with the feeling that I have taken so much from the society, I have taken so much from people, you want to give back. And when that attitude of giving back is, in short, service. So you become a giver, no more a taker. However, it's very difficult to hold on to that stance of a giver, because invariably you are a taker. I am a taker. We keep taking from the society. We keep taking from people around, from nature. We are takers. But when that cognition arises, when you start worshipping Murari, so that act of prayer is interpreted as doing seva. And when that love for people, when you serve, you have an identification with people. You serve them, and that love becomes pure. Prayer is nothing but love. Love with God. Love with whomever you are identifying with. You love your parents, you serve your parents. You love your employees, you serve them. There's identification. You have a feeling for the poor, you serve them. So they're all connected. And then when you do karma, bhakti, jnanam, these three, what is important to note, it is not captured here, but that's the extra you'll have to understand. Every one of us have to do all three. All of us have to do karma yoga. All of us have to do bhakti yoga. All of us have to do jnana yoga. Amar, can you tell me why do I say all of us have to do karma, bhakti, jnanam?
Because each individual has different proportion. Some will be more of karma, some will be of bhakti, some will be of jnana. So the portion varies. So it's a combination of all three is a person.
Yeah. Now combination of what? You're right. Combination of
Action,
what? Yeah.
Devotion and knowledge. You should have only knowledge also will not play. Only devotion also will not play. Only action also. So we should put action. Whenever you are doing an action without intellect, it is not possible. So you should have a right intellect to guide your actions. So it's all interlinked.
Yeah. The slide, I know you're getting where you're coming from, but to make it simpler, what I was looking at is every human being is a composition of three equipments: a physical body, a mind, and intellect. This is the basic definition I was looking at, which you have gone a little deeper that, but that's fair enough. So since you have got a body, mind, and intellect, you have to perform three parts, three equipments, three parts, three tools, three ways to get to the self. So when you, and what you got to notice, the proportion of your body, mind, intellect, called the BMI, varies in individuals. So to the extent you are physical, you got to do service. To the extent you got to do you're emotional, you got to do devotion. To the extent you're intellectual, you got to do jnana, karma, bhakti, jnana. And this is where perhaps a guru comes in to give you that right proportion. You need to understand your constitution or surrender to a guru who can help you what your constitution is. So it could be 30% physical, 40% devotional, 30% intellectual. If a person who is 30% intellectual and he is doing 90% intellectual, it is going to do damage to him. Vis-a-vis a person who is 30% physical and doing 70% karma, and then he is not giving himself the sufficient knowledge of what his requirements are, he will not grow properly. So it is very scientific, it's very carefully given. And when you proportion your spiritual practices, what happens, he says, he has no dispute with Yama. Now how are you to understand this? No quarrel with Yama. No contention with Yama. Shankaracharya, enna sir, indha madiri pesringa? You're talking like this. How are we to understand? What does it mean by no contention with Yama? See, death, philosophically, death only means change. So no contention or no dispute with Yama means you have overcome change. And what does change do to you? Whenever you are subjected to any change, what happens to you? Any change, whether physical, material, intellectual, spiritual, any change. I know, Rajima, you are very eager to evolve. Huh? Now, there are 2 points of view. Bharadwajji and Rajima are saying evolution and transformation. Gayatrima and Dharnima are saying it causes stress and discomfort. Now, there are 2 standpoints here. Vasanti is saying it takes time to adapt. Correct. Sedramanji is saying resistance and pain. Jayama also is saying there is resistance. In fact, in short, what some of you are right. Any change brings about a lot of agitation. Change, no doubt, is evolution though. But any change brings about a lot of agitation. Let's say you are being promoted from class 3 to class 4. And all your friends are gone. And you have a new class teacher, you have to go to a different classroom. The whole last year you sat in one classroom, you sat in a particular bench with the close friends. You used to share your lollipop with them, you used to share your pencil with them, your eraser with them, you used to go in the same van, whatever. And suddenly when you go after the summer holidays, you go to a different class. Crying and crying in the class, why my teacher is no more with me, my friends are no more with me, but actually you have been promoted. There is no reason for you to cry. But why are you affected? Change brings about, even for the betterment, it brings a lot of agitation. It requires to adapt to the change. Human race is suffering because we are not able to adapt to the change. It's a sweeping statement, examine it. You're not able to adapt to the change because of your attachment. You get attached. Yes, Sudhakar Garu, it takes time to acquaint yourself. Whatever the changes happens around you, it takes a lot of time, a lot of wisdom to be able to in fact, a smart man, a wise man anticipates and he prepares himself. So he is never surprised by the change. He is ever alert to make that assessment of situations. You're never surprised. In fact, the moment you're surprised by things means you're not prepared for life. A smart man, a wise man, a thinking man takes all the necessary measures to be prepared for the change and eventualities. Whatever can happen. And when it happens, he's never surprised. So when he says change, it means sorrow and suffering. Even if I have got a wisdom tooth, it brings about a lot of pain, isn't it? But the good thing is they say eat a lot of ice cream. I remember the doctor says eat ice cream. Okay, thank God. At least now even everybody in the house say eat ice cream or something cold, So some kind of association you find wherever there is change, there is pain. Therefore, they describe the truth or the reality. Another name for it is the changeless entity, they say. It never changes. An example is the anvil of a blacksmith. A blacksmith has an anvil. On that anvil, he molds various tools, doesn't he? but the anvil remains changeless. Am I right? So you must be the changeless, not be affected by the change that happen around you. And the Shastras are saying, you are the changeless. And when one does karma, bhakti, jnanam, you will have no contention with yama, means you become the changeless. So you follow the highway, you will reach the destination. It is their own language is saying, you cross that phase of mortality, you become immortal, you become the self. Again, as I've said, it is very difficult to decode it. It's very difficult to understand what these words convey. But once you understand, once you get the implication, the concept is the takeaway. Doesn't matter what the verse uses the terms, but get the takeaway and try to recap that. Try to think of it and then form concepts. And this is a learning, and each one of us have to go through it. Change is a natural process, but the problem is change should not put you through pain, sir. The problem, if you're not prepared to face life, change causes a lot of pain. I'm shifting house from one house to another, you're changing, but a lot of grumbling and complaining, and you are not able to adapt to the change. If someone who lives with a job, who is constantly being posted in different cities, that's what his job demands. But do you enjoy that? Do you embrace that? Do you accept that and live with it? Or you grumble and complain and find fault with it? All the time, whenever you're coming to end of your term, you're full of unrest. Why? Because there's a change. So change is the way of life. Another name for the world is change. Remember that. World means change. The truth is, you must not be affected by the change. How is it? By identifying with yourself, with your inner self, you become the changeless. You identify with the world, you go through change, you suffer. It's a beautiful thought process. You got to see the message and adapt to it. It's a learning. Right? I will leave you with this. We'll come back next week and we shall take the text forward. Okay? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Hari Om.